My daughter looked me dead in the eye and called me Sarah instead of Mommy. Then she asked for the unicorn pancakes that Daddy's special friend makes when she sleeps over. You know that moment when the universe just stops? That Sunday brunch, amidst the clinking of expensive cutlery, my 4-year-old didn't just drop a crumb. She nuked my entire marriage with a side of maple syrup. It turns out Yale doesn't offer a seminar on what to do when your toddler exposes your crumbling marriage over a lesson in Belgian waffles. That is exactly what happened last Sunday when my daughter Eloise looked up from her strawberry-covered plate and called me Sarah. The elegant Waterford crystal goblets on our dining table suddenly looked like cheap plastic, while my in-laws froze mid-bite and my husband Curtis turned a shade of white that Pottery Barn would probably call adulterer's porcelain. I am Sylvia Lewis, 36 years old, editor-in-chief of Lumens magazine. That award-winning publication everyone claims to read but actually just displays on their reclaimed wood coffee tables to look smart. And apparently, I have been cast in the role of the oblivious wife in the Connecticut suburban version of a Lifetime movie without even auditioning. Sweetie, I am Mommy, not Sarah, I corrected Eloise with my best PTA meeting smile. The kind that shows teeth but hides absolute panic. But you look like Sarah, Eloise insisted, stabbing her waffle with the precision of a tiny district attorney. Sarah has pretty hair like you. She is Daddy's girlfriend. She sleeps in Daddy's room when you go on your important business trips. The silence that followed was so thick you could spread it on toast. Curtis choked on his $7 artisanal cold brew. And my mother-in-law, Victoria, who has spent the last 8 years insinuating that my career was the reason Curtis and I only had one child, suddenly became intensely interested in rearranging the seasonal table runner. Sarah makes unicorn pancakes, Eloise continued, oblivious to the mushroom cloud she had just detonated over our handcrafted farmhouse table. And she has sparkly nails. Can I have sparkly nails too, Mommy? I have to admit, the detail about the unicorn pancakes hurt more than it should have. I have been making heart-shaped pancakes for Eloise for years, but apparently, I had been outdone by mythological breakfast creatures. Curtis, I said, my voice as calm as a Xanax commercial. Who is Sarah? My husband of 8 years, the man I met at a publishing conference in Boston, the same man who proposed on the pier in New York with a 2 or 3 carat diamond that maxed out his credit card. Suddenly, he developed an intense fascination with his linen napkin. He folded it into smaller and smaller squares as if he could disappear right along with it. She is probably talking about Sarah from daycare, Curtis tried, his voice cracking like a 13-year-old boy. You know how kids mix things up. Except Eloise does not go to daycare. She attends the Fairfield Montessori School, which costs more per year than my college textbooks did, specifically so she could develop what the brochure called exceptional cognitive precision. Daddy, Sarah isn't from school, Eloise corrected him with the brutal honesty that only children possess. She is the lady who works with you, the one who gave me the sparkly unicorn sticker for my reward chart. She said I am the prettiest girl, just like my daddy is the most handsome daddy. My father-in-law, Richard, a retired insurance executive who still wears a tie to Sunday lunch on principle, suddenly needed to check something in his Lexus. My mother-in-law discovered an urgent text from her bridge partner, and Curtis developed a mysterious coughing fit that forced him to excuse himself to the kitchen. I sat there, mentally calculating how many nights Curtis had worked late in the last 6 months. 47. How many emergency client meetings had popped up on weekends? 16. And how many business trips had mysteriously extended by a day or two? 9. You know, we tell ourselves we are too smart to be fooled. We think we would see the signs, catch the scent of cheap perfume, or find the lipstick on the collar. But the truth is, betrayal often looks like a hard-working husband trying to provide for his family. I had been so busy balancing motherhood with running a magazine that I hadn't noticed my marriage had become an open relationship. Except I was the only one who didn't know the rules. More syrup, Eloise? I asked, passing her the Vermont maple syrup that costs as much per ounce as a decent whiskey. While Eloise drowned what was left of her waffle, I checked Curtis's Instagram, which he had conveniently left open on his iPad. There she was, tagged in his company photos. Sarah Bellamy, the newly appointed CFO of Fairfield Financial Partners, where Curtis was executive vice president. Her profile picture showed impossibly shiny hair, a dazzling smile, and I could not make this up, a plate of unicorn-shaped pancakes with the caption, "Weekend Vibes Brunch Queen." I nearly laughed out loud. It was so cliché, it was almost insulting. By the time Curtis returned from his strategic retreat to the kitchen, I had also found 17 photos of them at various company events, standing progressively closer in each one. In the most recent one, his hand was resting on the small of her back. That intimate gesture declares territorial rights more effectively than peeing on a fire hydrant. "So, unicorn pancakes, huh?" I said when he sat down again, his face composed into what he probably thought was casual innocence. "That is a pretty impressive skill for a CFO. The color drained from his face faster than our property value would once I was done with him. "Sylvia, it is not what you think," he started, the universal mating call of the trapped spouse. "Not here," I said, pointing to Eloise, who was now arranging her strawberries into a smiley face, happily unaware she had just blown up my marriage like a glitter bomb at a funeral. Curtis looked grateful, probably thinking he had bought time to construct an elaborate explanation. Little did he know I had already screenshotted everything and texted the photos to myself. Yale might not teach courses on handling marital betrayal, but it definitely taught me research methodology and strategic planning. My in-laws returned with the timing of synchronized swimmers, their faces fixed in what they hoped were neutral expressions. "Well, this has been lovely," my mother-in-law said, reaching for her Burberry coat. "But we really should get going. Bridge club, very important match today." "On a Sunday?" I asked sweetly. "It is a special tournament," she improvised, avoiding my eyes. "Very prestigious." "Of course," I nodded. Almost as prestigious as being named CFO at 32 with only 3 years of experience in the field. Sarah must be quite the financial prodigy. The silence that followed was broken only by Eloise asking if we could get a unicorn. After they left, Curtis tried damage control. "Sylvia, I can explain. Sarah is just a colleague who—" "Not now," I cut him off. "I have to edit an article for a deadline tomorrow. We will discuss your colleague, her unicorn pancakes, and her apparent sleepovers in our house while I was landing the Cartier ad contract in Chicago, tonight, after Eloise is asleep." What Curtis didn't know was that I wasn't editing an article. I was actually researching Connecticut divorce laws, texting my friend Marin, who happens to be the best family lawyer in Fairfield County, and formulating a plan that would make Sarah's unicorn pancakes look like amateur hour. Because while Curtis was busy working late, he had forgotten a crucial detail. I don't just edit stories for a living. I control the narrative. And this narrative was about to take a twist he never saw coming. Putting a 4-year-old to bed after she has inadvertently exposed your husband's infidelity is like trying to fold a fitted sheet. Technically possible, but unnecessarily complicated. Eloise wanted 4 bedtime stories, 2 glasses of water, and a detailed explanation of why unicorns don't come to Connecticut. By the time I finally closed her door, I had mentally drafted and deleted 17 different confrontation speeches. I found Curtis in his home office typing furiously on his laptop, probably Googling how to convince your wife that your girlfriend's sleepovers are work-related, or extended stay hotels nearby with good Yelp reviews. So I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Sarah Bellamy, CFO Unicorn Pancake Expert. Tell me, does HR know about your innovative mentorship techniques?" Curtis slammed his laptop shut with the panic speed of a teenager hiding pornography. "Sylvia, it is not what you think." "That is fascinating, because I think you are sleeping with your newly promoted colleague in our bed while I am securing ad deals that pay for Eloise's Montessori tuition. Please, enlighten me on what it actually is." "It is complicated," he offered, employing the relationship status beloved by cheaters and tax evaders worldwide. "Complicated," I repeated, tapping my Tory birch flat against the hardwood floor we had refinished last summer while discussing our 5-year plan. "You know what is complicated? Quantum physics, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, explaining to our daughter why Daddy's special friend makes better breakfast food than Mommy." Curtis ran a hand through his artfully messy hair. The same haircut he had maintained since business school, which cost $85 every 6 weeks at that pretentious salon downtown. It just happened. Sylvia, you are always working, always traveling. I cut him off with a laugh that would make my therapist wince. Wow. So this is my fault? I am too busy earning a living to notice you have turned our marriage into a timeshare property? I am not saying that, but we drifted apart. Did Sarah drift into our house? Did she trip and fall into our West Elm bed with her unicorn pancake mix? Or did you actively invite her over while I was in Chicago closing the deal that paid for your Tesla? Curtis had the audacity to look hurt. You are making this sound sordid. And you are making this sound like an innocent misunderstanding instead of months of calculated deceit. I pulled out my phone and pulled up the screenshots I had taken earlier. 17 company events where you two are practically merging into one person. The company photographer captured the exact moment you decided our vows had an expiration date. It wasn't planned, Curtis protested, his voice hitting that whiny register that emerged whenever he felt cornered. Sarah and I just connected. She understands the pressure I am under. The pressure you are under, I laughed again. This time with the hollow sound of a woman discovering her husband's emotional depth was comparable to a puddle in the Sahara. Please tell me more about this crushing pressure of being an EVP with a corner office while I balance running an entire magazine with raising our daughter. The doorbell rang, interrupting what was shaping up to be an Emmy-worthy confrontation. Curtis looked relieved until I checked my phone and smiled. That must be Marin, I said pleasantly. Your lawyer friend? Why is she here at 9 p.m. on a Sunday? I shrugged. I wanted a witness when I changed the locks. Curtis went pale. You can't just change the locks. This is my house, too. Actually, it is my house, I corrected. If you had bothered to read the documents when we refinanced last year, you would know I am the sole title holder. Remember when you were too busy to attend to the closing and signed the power of attorney? Turns out being lazy and unfaithful is a pretty potent combination. The look on his face was worth every penny of that overpriced Montessori tuition. While he processed this information, I went to let Marin in. She arrived with locksmith tools, a bottle of Veuve Clicquot, and the determined look of someone who enjoys dismantling cheaters almost as much as she enjoys winning custody battles. Good evening, Curtis, she nodded briskly as she walked past his office. I brought you some light reading, separation agreement, preliminary asset division, and a custody schedule. She dropped a manila folder on his desk with the precision of someone delivering an anthrax sample. This is ridiculous, Curtis sputtered. You can't just— Oh, but I can, I interrupted. You see, while you were teaching Sarah the intricacies of pancake art, I was ensuring our finances were in order. Did you know Connecticut is an equitable distribution state? Marin explained it all to me this afternoon. Curtis's face cycled through emotions faster than Eloise chooses ice cream flavors. You are overreacting. We should discuss this privately. Like how you privately discussed our marriage with Sarah, or privately invited her into our home. I pointed toward our kitchen. Did she use my Williams-Sonoma cookware for those unicorn pancakes, or did she bring her own spatula? These are the details that keep me up at night. Marin, bless her divorce lawyer heart, started inspecting our front door lock with clinical detachment. Standard deadbolt. I can swap this out in 20 minutes. The back door might take longer. Curtis looked between us. The reality was finally penetrating his privileged bubble of entitlement. Where am I supposed to go tonight? I hear Sarah's place is nice, I offered sweetly, though it might be awkward explaining to her why you are suddenly homeless. I am sorry, sweetie. Turns out my wife isn't as clueless as we thought. Can you make me some consolation pancakes? His face flushed with anger. You are enjoying this, aren't you? Almost as much as I enjoyed hearing my daughter call me by your girlfriend's name, I shot back. My smile never wavered. Now, I suggest you pack a bag. Nothing fancy, just the essentials. Oh, and don't forget your toothbrush. Dental hygiene is very important when you are orally explaining to your boss why you might be facing a sexual harassment lawsuit. Curtis froze. You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? The company has a clear policy against fraternization, especially between executives and their direct reports. Did Sarah's promotion happen before or after she started making breakfast in my kitchen? The board might find that timeline interesting. The blood drained from his face as he realized I wasn't just mad. I was strategic. Sometimes people mistake kindness for weakness. They think because you are the one who remembers birthdays and organizes play dates, you don't have a killer instinct. They are wrong. You would ruin my career over this? You ruined our family over unicorn pancakes, I retorted. We all make choices, Curtis. Yours led to this moment. Mine are leading to changed locks and an inquiry with your company's ethics committee. As if on cue, Marin pulled out her phone. Shall I text Marcus? He is on the board of Fairfield Financial, isn't he? We played golf last weekend at the country club. The mention of Marcus, the notoriously straight-laced head of the board, was the final blow. Curtis disappeared upstairs and returned 10 minutes later with a duffel bag and the haunted look of a man who just realized his affair was going to cost him more than his American Express black card could cover. At the door, he tried one last appeal. What about Eloise? She needs her father. Does she? I agreed. She needs a father who respects her mother. When you figure out how to be that man, we will talk about visitation that doesn't involve your mistress's culinary skills. As Curtis walked to his Tesla, I called out, One last thing. Tell Sarah her unicorn pancakes lack imagination. Everyone knows real magical breakfast food comes with glitter sprinkles. I slammed the door in his stunned face, leaning against it as Marin popped the champagne cork. Round one to Sylvia Lewis, she declared, pouring bubbles into coffee mugs since I couldn't remember where I had stored the champagne flutes. But this is just the beginning. You know that, right? I nodded, accepting the makeshift champagne glass. Oh, I know, and I am just getting started. Little did Curtis know I had spent the afternoon not just consulting with Marin on divorce proceedings, but also calling my old college roommate Thea, who now worked at the parent company of Curtis's firm. And what she told me about Sarah Bellamy's suspiciously rapid rise to CFO was about to make unicorn pancakes the least of Curtis's problems. Mondays are rough for anyone, but they are especially challenging when you are running on 4 hours of sleep and planning the systematic dismantling of your cheating husband's life. After dropping Eloise off at Montessori, where she helpfully informed her teacher that Daddy has a sleepover friend named Sarah who makes unicorn food, I headed to my office at Lumen's with a 20-ounce cold brew and the kind of determination usually reserved for marathon runners and Black Friday shoppers. My assistant, Zoe, took one look at me and whispered, "Restroom. Now." We filed in, she locked the door and said, "You look like you are planning a murder or a magazine redesign, and frankly, both scare me." Curtis is having an affair with his newly promoted CFO, I said, reapplying my MAC Russian red lipstick with surgical precision. Eloise outed them at lunch yesterday. Apparently, Sarah makes unicorn pancakes when I am out of town. Zoe's jaw dropped so fast I worried she dislocated it. That absolute dirtbag! Please tell me you are destroying him. I changed the locks last night, I said, fluffing my hair. But that is just the appetizer. I am about to serve a 5-course revenge meal that Gordon Ramsay would call spectacularly ruthless. Back at my desk, I called Thea, who had promised to send over some interesting files. Within minutes, my email pinged with documents bearing the letterhead of Fairfield Financial Partners. Christmas came early, I muttered, scanning the contents. According to the files, Sarah Bellamy's promotion to CFO had bypassed 3 more qualified candidates, including a woman who had been with the firm for 12 years. The board had questioned the rapid ascent, but Curtis had personally vouched for Sarah's exceptional financial acumen, apparently a corporate euphemism for making mythical creature-shaped breakfasts. Even more interesting, Sarah had been granted signing authority on certain accounts just 3 weeks after her promotion. Accounts that showed some questionable transfers to offshore consulting firms that didn't seem to exist. I was so absorbed in my discovery that I almost missed my phone vibrating with Curtis's 5th call of the morning. I declined it just like I declined his 27 text messages ranging from remorseful, "I made a terrible mistake," to indignant, "You can't just kick me out of my own house," to pathetic, "Please, just tell me what suit to wear for my meeting today." Instead, I texted Marin. "Found something. Lunch?" We met at an overpriced salad spot that Curtis hated because they didn't serve anything substantial enough for a man's appetite. I slid the documents across the table after ordering. "So, Marin said, scanning the pages while stabbing a $19 kale mixture. Your husband didn't just promote his girlfriend suspiciously fast, he also gave her financial powers she is potentially misusing. That is not just an affair, that is a lawsuit buffet. The question is, I sipped my sparkling water, how do I leverage this without getting Curtis arrested for financial impropriety? I want to destroy his relationship and his career, not send him to federal prison. Eloise still needs a dad, even if he is a cheating idiot. Marin's eyes gleamed. She lived for these strategic challenges. The company's annual charity gala is this Friday, right? The one where Curtis is receiving that leadership award? I nodded. The Fairfield Financial Philanthropy Ball. I have been helping him practice his acceptance speech for weeks. I laughed bitterly. He keeps stumbling on the part where he thanks his supportive wife and family. Guess now I know why. Perfect. Marin tapped the documents. We don't need to alert the SEC. We just need to let the board know something fishy is going on. A little corporate blood in the water. By the time our overpriced lunch was over, we had crafted a plan so meticulous it could have been featured in the Harvard Business Review under the title, Creative Destruction, Dismantling Infidelity with Strategic Precision. That afternoon, I called the event planner for the philanthropy ball, Vivian Mercer, who I had once featured in Lumens for her innovative approach to sustainable event design. Vivian, it is Sylvia Lewis, I cooed. Listen, I want to surprise Curtis at the gala. I know I wasn't scheduled to speak, but I have prepared something special for his award presentation. Can you squeeze me into the program? Vivian, delighted by the romantic gesture, happily adjusted the evening's schedule. You are right after the chairman's intro and before Curtis accepts the award. About 3 minutes, if that works? Perfect, I confirmed. Oh, and one more thing. Could you ensure I am seated next to Marcus Reynolds at dinner? Curtis mentioned he wanted me to discuss a potential magazine feature on Marcus's philanthropic work. Next, I contacted my friend Jade, who ran the most exclusive dress boutique in Fairfield. I need something unforgettable for Friday, the kind of dress that makes men weep and women take notes. My office phone lit up with my mother-in-law's name. Interesting timing. Victoria, what a surprise, I answered sweetly. Sylvia, darling, her voice dripped with artificial concern. Curtis mentioned you two had a misunderstanding. He is staying at the Marriott. A hotel, Sylvia. What will people think? Probably that he should have thought about accommodation options before sleeping with his CFO in our bed, I replied pleasantly, as if discussing the weather. By the way, did you know about Sarah before Eloise mentioned her unicorn pancakes? Or was that a delightful surprise for you too? Victoria's sharp intake of breath told me everything. These things happen in marriages, dear. Richard and I went through a similar patch when Richard was sleeping with his secretary while you raised his children? Is infidelity the Lewis family tradition I wasn't briefed on during the wedding toast? Silence. Then, we should discuss this privately. Perhaps dinner tomorrow? I am afraid I am busy preparing for the philanthropy ball on Friday. Curtis is getting an award. You know, I wouldn't miss it for the world. After hanging up, I turned my attention to the most important task, ensuring Eloise was shielded from the fallout. I called her therapist, Dr. Flynn, and scheduled an emergency session for Wednesday, explaining the situation in careful terms. By Wednesday night, my plan was fully formed. I had 1. A devastatingly elegant red dress that cost more than some people's monthly mortgage. 2. A carefully crafted 3-minute speech saved on my phone. 3. A seat next to Marcus Reynolds, who would be receiving an anonymous email about financial irregularities 1 hour before the gala. 4. Screenshots of Curtis and Sarah's Instagram interactions. 5. A dossier on Sarah's suspicious financial activities. 6. A modified divorce agreement drafted by Marin. 7. A new deadbolt on every exterior door of our house. What I didn't have was peace of mind about how this would affect Eloise. Her session with Dr. Flynn had gone well, but she had asked the heartbreaking question, did Daddy leave because I told about Sarah? That night, as I tucked her in, I promised her, Daddy loves you very much. Grown-ups sometimes make mistakes that have nothing to do with their kids. You didn't do anything wrong. Will Daddy come home? She asked, clutching her stuffed penguin. I don't know, baby, I answered honestly. But whatever happens with Daddy and me, We both love you more than anything in the world." After she fell asleep, I got a text from Curtis. "Please, can we talk before Friday? For Eloise's sake." I looked at the message, considering the sincere plea. Then I remembered the unicorn pancakes, the secret sleepovers, the calculated deception, and Sarah's suspicious promotion. My fingers typed quickly. "Absolutely. I will see you at the philanthropy ball. I have prepared something special for your award presentation. I am sure Sarah will love it too." I smiled as I imagined Curtis panicking, wondering exactly what I had planned. The beauty of my strategy wasn't just in what I would do, it was in the psychological torment of making him wait to find out. As my grandmother used to say, the anticipation of punishment is often worse than the punishment itself. But in Curtis's case, the punishment would absolutely live up to the hype. Friday could not come soon enough. Friday night arrived with the dramatic pacing of a Netflix season finale. The Fairfield Yacht Club glowed with tasteful lighting as the financial elite of Connecticut arrived in luxury vehicles that cost more than the average public school teacher's annual salary. I had spent the day being pampered into a weapon of mass destruction, hair blown out to glossy perfection, makeup that could cut glass, and that red dress making me look like revenge personified. My Uber pulled up at precisely 7:42 p.m., late enough to make an entrance, but early enough not to miss my scheduled speaking slot. The driver whistled as I got out. "Someone is going to have a very good night or a very bad one." "Oh, it is going to be spectacular," I assured him, adjusting my diamond earrings. A gift from Curtis on our 5th anniversary, which seemed appropriate for the occasion. The gala was in full swing when I walked in. A waiter offered me champagne, which I accepted with the smile of someone about to set fire to a metaphorical village. Across the room, I spotted Curtis in his Tom Ford tuxedo, nervously scanning the crowd while making forced conversation with board members. When he saw me, his champagne glass froze halfway to his mouth. Next to him was Sarah Bellamy, whose expression went from smug confidence to visible concern as she registered my arrival. Her black dress was designer, sure, but it was the wardrobe equivalent of store-bought pancake mix. I waved cheerily and headed to my assigned table where Marcus Reynolds was already seated. At 62, Marcus was the financial industry's version of Obi-Wan Kenobi, respected, powerful, and not someone you wanted as an enemy. "Sylvia Lewis," I extended my hand. "We met at the Governor's Economic Summit last year." "Of course," he nodded. "I enjoyed your magazine's feature on sustainable investing. Thoughtful work." "Thank you. I believe in shedding light on important issues," I replied, making deliberate eye contact. "Transparency is everything in journalism and finance. Wouldn't you agree?" Marcus studied me with the shrewd assessment of someone who didn't become a billionaire by missing subtleties. "Absolutely. Though not everyone appreciates lights being turned on in dark corners." "I imagine not." I sipped my champagne. "Especially when those corners contain unicorn pancakes and questionable financial transfers." His eyebrow arched a fraction of an inch, the billionaire equivalent of a gasp. "I received an interesting email about an hour ago. Anonymous, but quite specific." "How curious," I murmured. "Technology makes anonymity so accessible these days, much like it makes documenting extramarital affairs and financial irregularities easier." Marcus's eyes twinkled with something between appreciation and alarm. Before he could respond, the chairman approached the podium to begin the award presentations. Curtis was still staring at me with the panicked look of a man who realized he had brought a water gun to a nuclear war. Sarah whispered something in his ear, her hand resting possessively on his arm until she realized I was watching and snatched it back. The chairman's voice boomed through the ballroom. "Before we present our award for excellence in leadership to Curtis Lewis, we have a special surprise. Curtis's wife, Sylvia Lewis, editor-in-chief of Lumen's magazine, would like to say a few words. Sylvia." A spotlight found me as I made my way to the podium, my red dress creating a wake of whispers. Curtis looked like he might vomit into the centerpiece. "Thank you," I smiled into the microphone. When my husband told me he was receiving this prestigious award, I knew I had to say something special. I paused, letting Curtis's relief wash over him prematurely. "Leadership takes many forms," I continued. "In business, It means making ethical choices that benefit your company. In marriage, it means honoring your commitments. And in parenting, it means modeling the behavior you would want your children to emulate. The audience nodded appreciatively, unaware of the incoming missile. Unfortunately, my husband has failed spectacularly at all three. The collective intake of breath could have sucked the oxygen out of the room. Curtis froze like a deer in the headlights of a designer car. You see, while Curtis was being nominated for this award, he was simultaneously promoting his mistress to CFO, bypassing more qualified candidates and giving her authority over accounts that have shown, I consulted my phone casually, approximately $2.3 million in transfers to shell companies in the last quarter. Marcus Reynolds set his champagne glass down with a definitive clink. I discovered this not through corporate espionage, I clarified, but because our 4-year-old daughter innocently mentioned that Daddy's girlfriend Sarah makes unicorn pancakes in our kitchen when I am away on business. Parenting tip: children are terrible at keeping secrets, but excellent witnesses. Sarah Bellamy started inching toward the exit while every eye turned to her. Curtis remained paralyzed at his table. Now, I could elaborate on how Curtis gave Sarah access to our home while I was securing ad deals that paid for his Tesla, or how he gaslit me for months about his late nights at the office. But instead, I would like to focus on the leadership lessons here. I gestured to the screen behind me, which now displayed the financial documents Thea had provided. These questionable transfers began 3 weeks after Sarah's promotion. I have provided copies to the board and, out of an abundance of caution, to the SEC. The room erupted in murmurs. Curtis finally found mobility and stood up, his face contorted in panic. "Sylvia, this is inappropriate." "Inappropriate?" I laughed. "Like sleeping with your direct report, or using company funds uniquely, or letting your girlfriend make breakfast for our daughter while pretending she is just a colleague." I turned back to the audience. For those wondering, yes, the pancakes were shaped like unicorns. Because nothing says, "I am having an affair with a married father," like mythological breakfast foods. Security had already positioned themselves near Sarah, who had abandoned subtlety and was openly trying to bolt for the door. In conclusion, I smiled sweetly. I resign from the honor of being married to Curtis Lewis. Effective immediately. Divorce papers will be delivered to his room at the Marriott tonight. And while I cannot speak for Fairfield Financial Partners, I suspect his employment status might also be under review. I turned directly to Curtis. Leadership means accountability, Curtis, though I am sure that is covered in the sexual harassment training you apparently slept through. I walked away from the podium to stunned silence, followed by scattered applause led by Marcus Reynolds, who looked simultaneously horrified and impressed. As I passed Curtis, I whispered, "The unicorn pancakes were a nice touch. Very creative. Unfortunately for you, so am I." Security was now escorting Sarah toward a side room where, I assumed, awkward questions about financial transfers awaited her. Curtis tried to follow me as I headed for the exit. "Sylvia, please, you ruined everything," he hissed, grabbing my arm. I removed his hand with surgical precision. "No, Curtis. You ruined everything when you decided our wedding vows had a loophole for breakfast-making CFOs. I just exposed the truth. There is a difference." Marcus Reynolds intercepted us. "Curtis, the board needs to speak with you, now." His tone left no room for negotiation. As Curtis was led away, looking back at me with a mixture of rage and disbelief, I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Vivian, the event planner. "That wasn't exactly the loving tribute we discussed," she said, though her eyes sparkled with admiration. "Oh, but it was a tribute," I replied. "To honesty, to consequences, and to the power of unicorn pancakes to topple corporate empires." See, outside, I slipped into my waiting Uber, texting Marin. "Mission accomplished, picking up Eloise from your place. Also, we might need to prepare for more SEC involvement than anticipated." Her reply came instantly. "Already on it. By the way, you are trending locally on Twitter. #UnicornPancakeRevenge." As the car pulled away from the yacht club, I watched Curtis's professional life implode through the rear window and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not happiness. Not yet. but the serene certainty that comes from reclaiming your own narrative. Unicorn pancakes might be magical, but served cold with a side of public humiliation? That was the true masterstroke. 3 months after the gala, the locals now call the Unicorn Pancake Massacre. Life has settled into a new normal that feels surprisingly comfortable. Eloise and I moved to a charming craftsman house in Westport, and the divorce settlement was shockingly favorable. It is amazing how generous men become when facing potential federal investigations. My ex-husband is now working at a much smaller firm in Rhode Island, genuinely trying to rebuild his relationship with our daughter, and last week, he finally apologized for real. The lesson isn't that revenge is sweet or that men are untrustworthy, but that we are more adaptable than we think. Sometimes the most painful revelations lead to the most authentic lives, and losing what we thought we needed reveals what we actually deserve. This is a work of fiction, of course, stitched together from the whispered truths of suburban life. But let it be a reminder: dignity is non-negotiable, boundaries are sacred, and real love never requires you to shrink yourself to fit someone else's secrets.